Let's learn how to fit commercial patterns to your body. Good day everyone, I am Caitlin, and on this channel we teach old-fashioned sewing skills and make reproduction clothing. And today I would like to talk to you about fitting commercial patterns to your body, because no body is going to fit a perfect size, especially put out by pattern makers, and every pattern maker is different and they use slightly different measurements, and everything's just a little bit different. It's not going to fit you exactly how the 19th century would have had very fitted clothing unless you actually fit it to yourself. So we're going to talk about that today. So if you've been on the channel long, you know I am a huge proponent of actually drafting patterns to fit you. And it's very simple. You take squares of fabric and you just draw lines where the lines are in the original garments, and then presto, you have a garment that actually fits you, whether you have one breast that's slightly smaller than the other, or you have a dropped shoulder, or your waist is slightly longer on one side, or whatever have you that makes you unique. It's very easy to fit yourself. It allows you okay. Yeah, I'm talking, aren't I? Yeah, it's not the time. I love you too. It's very easy to fit yourself and to get a pattern that actually get a pattern that fits you as a person. But perhaps you've tried pattern drafting and it's just not for you. If that's the case, you would like to give it another go, I do offer making patterns for people. I can either do it in person, where I actually draft the pattern for you, or I offer a virtual consultation where I teach somebody else to draft a pattern to you. So you can still get that personal drafted pattern, and I will have a link to that in my website. So I'll have a link to my website below, and you can check that out if that's something you are interested in. Otherwise, I do have several videos if you're more of a DIY or I can figure this out by myself type of person. I do have videos on how to draft a couple different time periods. I don't have them all yet. I'm working on that. But I will have those linked down below as well. And that way, if you want to try it, you're more than welcome to. But let's say you've tried that and you just don't want to have to draft your own pattern. You want to start with a commercial pattern. There's nothing wrong with that. There are lots of reasons people choose commercial patterns. Either availability, they can get it instantaneously, either going to the store and getting it, or like downloading a pattern instantaneously. They usually have pretty detailed directions, so if you need fairly detailed directions, written directions, that's probably going to be a good bet for you. But there are also lots of drawbacks to commercial patterns, and we've already talked about one, and that is the fact that it won't fit you exactly. The others is, especially if you get a pattern from what we call the big three, which would be Simplicity, McCall's, or Butterick. The pattern makers that you see in stores, like you go to Walmart or Hobby Lobby or Hancock's isn't a thing anymore. Does Michael still pattern? Joann's, I know, does. You can tell how often I actually buy commercial patterns. They do have pseudo-historical costumes, basically, in their costume category. And some of those actually have very good bases. Some of them actually have very nicely drafted from originals or drafted from original patterns. Some of the pattern makers are excellent, like Kay Nagy or Nancy, what's her last name? They are very decent pattern makers who go to original garments and go to original publications and make those patterns and then grade them up. However, then when they get sent to the big three will sometimes kind of muddle directions. They especially enjoy adding in easier directions. So if they decide that something that was the period direction is very difficult, they'll go, oh, we're just going to serge this, or we'll hot glue this, and they'll put those in the directions, and the unassuming person may just assume, oh, that's just how we do it, when that is not a historical accurate way of doing things at all. And so what you might get on the outside looks historical. It may not be historically accurate in terms of construction or the way it's put together, or even sometimes the lines and even the fitting. The big three especially really like to add a lot of ease to their patterns, and you don't need a lot of ease when you're wearing historical garments, especially if you're in historical underpinnings, whereas the big three will definitely add a lot of ease. And that's a problem, because it's not going to fit you the right way. It's not going to look right. It's going to require a lot more work to get something to fit you, as opposed to if you just went to an actual historical pattern maker or if you drafted your own pattern. Now, aside from the big three, there are other historical pattern makers that do it right. I know Burlington Trowbridge has their own line for 18th century. K-Fig is another good one. They do 19th to 20th century. I've heard past patterns are good. I've not actually used them. Not a huge fan of truly Victorian patterns, but they're available. I think their later 19th century stuff is better than their earlier 19th century stuff. Marna Davis, her patterns are what we're going to be using today to kind of fit on me, to kind of show you some tips and tricks. 20th century, I do a lot of things on Etsy, so like Mrs. Depew is really good. I have used Wearing History. I've had very good success for hers, except for her baby stuff. There were issues with that. As far as adult human size stuff, I found her stuff very good. And there's others. Some of them you actually can buy the physical pattern and you get it mailed to you, or you pick it up or whatever. Others you do instant download, which is my personal favorite because I like things instantaneously done. And when I decide I'm doing a project, it's usually at midnight and I'm like, I want this project done now. So I prefer instant download, but that's just me. And those directions are probably going to be a little bit better. Some of those, especially the 20th century stuff, they're not going to do a whole range of sizes. It might just be the original pattern size. Some of them do grade them to different sizes, some of them don't. You just kind of have to watch for that. But regardless, you're still going to have to do a good bit of fitting. So the first step you're going to do is to pick the size that you're going to need. And word advice, do not go by the size of clothing that you wear, whether it be size 14 or size 6 or size 2 or size 20 or whatever. Do not go by that. Every pattern maker is different in the actual measurements, and you're going to need those measurements. Secondly, you're going to need those measurements over your period correct undergarments. So you need to make sure you have your chemise or your shift or in your corset or your bra or whatever, for whatever time of history you're doing, make sure you have the correct underpinnings before you attempt to make an outfit. It will not look right unless you have the right underpinnings. Trust me, it's going to save you so much time and hassle and trouble, and you're going to look right if you just do it properly. So get the underpinnings. Once you have your underpinnings, you're going to need to take your measurements. Typically, we'll start with the bust, which is the fullest part of the breast. So right up underneath the arms, all across the fullest part of your bust, you're going to take that measurement. You don't want to pull tight, you do want to make sure that it's the right measurement. You don't want it to be loose where it's falling. You want the tape to be able to stay up without squishing anything. Of course, your waist measurement is very important. Although vast majority of the time unless you're doing a princess seam garment, you're going to be using darts or gathers or tucks or something to pull that in. Another good measurement to take would be your underbust, although that's not always included with pattern makers. If you're going to do anything that's fitted across the hips, get your hip measurement as well. And your pattern may have other measurements you can take as well, such as, your shoulder length or underbust to waist or back length or front length. There are other measurements you can take as well. Now, once you have those measurements, that's when you start looking at your pattern and you can find what size you are. Now, if you're using an actual historical pattern, specifically from the 20th century, they're going to be by bust sizes. So a size 34 would be a 34-inch bust. Size 45 would be a 45-inch bust. A size 26 would be a 26-inch bust. And that's because it's easier if you get a pattern that fits your bust, you can always adjust at the waist and at other measurements. It's hard to adjust your bust because that is the fullest part of your body. So what I like to do when I get my pattern is to actually circle my measurements onto the chart or whatever they show you with the sizes. And it is perfectly fine if you're different sizes on different parts of your body. That is normal. If your waist or something is significantly larger than your bust size, you probably want to go for your largest measurement as opposed to that bust size. But if it's within one or two, three sizes, you should probably just go through your bust because it's going to be easier to fit your bust as opposed to any other part of your body. So let's take my 1880s wrapper, for example. I'm going to be using a pattern by the Domestic Ladies Dressmaker. Her name is Marna Davis on Facebook, and then on Etsy, she's the Wicked Stepmothers. I know Marna personally, so I enjoy using her patterns, and I know that they come drafted directly from the many originals that she owns. Some of which she's let me handle, so some of which she brings to conferences and I actually get to handle, which is always very nice. So I trust her research and I trust her pattern making because I have seen the garments and I have seen her patterns, and they do make up exactly like the originals. So because I am a 44-inch bust, I went by a size 44, which would be a 44-inch bust. Even though I have a much smaller waist, that's not that big of a deal because this garment is darted. So after you have taken your measurements and you have decided what size to cut, your very next step is to cut a mock-up. This is not of your fashion fabric that you want to use for your final gown. This is going to be out of scrap fabric, lining fabric, whatever you have around. That's not imperative if it doesn't work out. And you're going to cut that size, sew it together, just as the shell. So don't add any piping, don't add sleeves, don't finish the neckline, don't add any closures. Just do the bodice shells. Any side seams, any back seams, and any shoulder seams. And that's when we're going to stop and fit. You're going to need all your period appropriate undergarments and your mock-up. Okay, so the room is a bit messy, but here we are. So I'm in my chemise, and we are drafting an 1880s outfit today. So I have my 1880s and 1870s corset here. And I couldn't find my 1870s and 1880s chemise, so we're wearing an earlier one. That should be fine. The only part this won't fit under the 1880s stuff is this poopier sleeves than I would want for 80s. But we're not fitting sleeves, we're fitting a bodice, so it's not that big of a deal. Alright, now I did not do my mock-up like I just told y'all to do for two reasons. One, because this is a Marna pattern, I know how Marna's patterns fit me, so I'm not concerned about this being totally scrapped. And also because I have enough fabric to totally recut this entire thing. So if I do happen to have to scrap it, it's not the end of the world for me. Now, first tip when actually fitting garments. Put it on inside out. And you'll see why in a second. So this one has part of the skirt attached because they're princess seams. So this, like the bodice, is entirely one piece all the way to the floor. Normally I wouldn't bother fitting this part. You're also going to need some pins. Okay. Now I know there's an inch overlap up here. And I'm just going to kind of pin this on. And at this point, you just kind of look around and see what fits and what doesn't. And anything that's too small, what I would do is I would take some scissors and I would just cut. So I know when I cut my final one, I'm going to need a dart there. Anything that's too big, we're going to take a tuck, which is really most of our problems. So I was recutting this, I might take a tuck right here. You can see a tiny little bit, it's a little bit full. But I think it's overall going to be a pretty good, actually, nope, look. See how big of a gap this is? I'm going to take a pin, this is why we put it inside out, because I can fit it exactly to where I need it to go, right here. Put a pin, and it fits pretty well here. This is about where it stops. I'm gonna put a pin there. So because I put this inside out, that's an easy seam. I don't have to mark it and then undo, like measure how much that is and take it out and put the pins back in there. This is exactly where I'm gonna sew. So that was a definitely needed to be fitted situation. Looks like we're pretty good. I was concerned about this arm's eye being too big, but actually it's not bad. Maybe half an inch, but I think that's gonna be okay. 1880 should come to the shoulder seam. I might, hang on. I have narrower shoulders than like my bust size, so this is pretty normal thing for me to have to fit. So top of my shoulder, let me do it this way. Top of my shoulder would be right here. Yeah, right here. So I'm gonna put a pin right here. Now that's not gonna be a cut line, that's gonna be a, make sure that this is a seam allowance width away, so I might have to cut that down just a tad. Another very normal thing for me to have to do on these patterns is this back seam. Because you see how it's kind of gaping up here? You don't want that gape. If you can't reach far back, you might need to have a helper, or you can kind of gauge it with your eyes, take the thing off, put the pin in it, try it back on. Which I might have to do. And I'm fairly symmetrical on both sides, so I don't have to do this on both sides, but if you notice a big difference on either side, you're going to want to do this on both sides. I do have a husband in the next room. I can have him come do this for me. There we go. So yeah, and that fits pretty well here, right around the neck, but not into right here. This is about where it needs to stop. Put a pin right there. Okay. Bust seems to fit pretty well. It's not overly loose. Back. Kind of pull this in a little bit so I can kind of feel for it. There's normally, because I have a really nipped in waist, I can usually do it quite a bit more right here. Yep. make sure to grab that side too, make sure I'm not, yeah. Oh, look at that. That's like 2 inches right there. Because again, I have a smaller waist than I do a bust. Again, I'm only marking that one side. The back feels pretty good where it is. So I would also do the same on this side. Now this is also where I'd mark the front darts if I was doing frontal darts. Now this pattern does call for darts, but personally for me, I wanted this as more of an over the nightgown wrapper as well as a future maternity gown. So I'm not going to put any darts in there because look at all that extra fabric I have for a potential maternity gown down the road. I want it fitted back here so it looks nice. Yes, that is the back of my chemise, the skirt. I haven't bustled it up yet. It's here. But this is where I would mark darts. And how I would do that is you could very well have marked them on your pattern. So the patterns will have suggested dart places. Those are suggested. They might fit you and your body, they might not. So just kind of mark them on where your pattern has them, and you could try that on. Like I would just pin it. Say the darts were, let me just do it like a sample dart real quick. Okay, let's say the marked darts or something like that. Like those are the pattern darts. I'm going to pin the very front of my dress to the very front of my corset so that I don't move it anyway. And you can see I have quite a bit of extra fabric to work with. First off, this needs to go a little bit lower because the dart should really start at the very full part of your bust. And then you're just kind of go around and moving the pins and getting more pins as needed to show exactly where you need this fitted. You don't want to pull the fabric too terribly much, but you do want to make sure that it is fitted across your body. So now that looks fairly fitted on that one side. So I would say this is going to be my darts. So what we're going to do at this point now, I'm not going to do darts, so I'm going to take this out. If you want the darts, you're going to leave them in. So that's going to be a little bit loose. Alright, and so I will have like a belt of some kind that will fold it in so it will be worn more like this as like a morning dress or with the nightgown again, but it'll also be loose for future use. So at this point, you're going to take out your frontal pins and we're going to take this whole thing off. I would leave your underpinnings on because what we're going to do is sew wherever we have pins. All those places that we pinned that we said, oh, it needs to be fixed, we're going to stitch it on the machine real quick, or if you're doing a hand sew garment, do it by hand. And we're going to come back and try it back on to make sure that what we did worked. I am stitching this on the original 1870 machine. So the reason that we did it inside out is because now you can see exactly where to start and where to stop. So I can start from here, go inward like that, exactly where my pins are. Whereas if I had done it on the other side, I would have had to, let's say we marked a dart on this side with pins. So I'd have to measure that, and I would have to take that pin out, put it on this side, put that measurement back down, and that's just a lot of work. If you do it inside out, it's just already there exactly how you need it, and there's no fuss. And there was a side bit. Yep. It needs to go in quite a bit. So I'm going to start it down here. This is hips. But basically anything. Oops. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Now this does have a bit on the other side that we're going to need to do the exact same thing. So the next step, once you get all your pieces refit, and now it should fit you, we're going to try it back on just to make sure. And there may be some fine tuning that needs to be done, which is perfectly normal. You also may be good at this point. So let's go ahead and try it on and find out. Alright, it is still inside out. Let's go ahead and try it back on. That lays over the front so nicely. Alright, let's see. So this definitely feels a whole lot better. That fits me much, much better. Put it on the back. Well, that could even be taken in a little bit more. But let me go ahead and... You're really good. Okay. I don't know if I really want to. Again, this is kind of like an undressed type of thing. I want it fitted, but I don't want it like fitted. But I could also pull it a little bit more forward and have a little bit more in the front. Because that looks like it fits pretty well. Yeah, that's about right. Okay. Back. Ooh, that's so much better. That actually fits all the way around. Looks pretty good on that side. You can see where I definitely snipped it in. And of course the front's still going to be unfitted because that's of course what we're doing. There's a little bit of wrinkling in there, I think because I'm pulling it forward a bit. But I do want, because that's technically where that's supposed to sit right there. In which case I do need to do a little bit more fitting back here. I bet it would make a difference since I took so much here. I bet I could take it all the way down. Let me try that and see where that gets me. If not, I'll just take it out. I think especially for a over the nightgown wrapper, that'll fit very well. And that's just basically how you fit a commercial pattern. You cut it out of preferably a muslin. Don't be like me. But again, I had tons of extra fabric. And if it actually fits pretty well, you can end up using your muslin or your mock-up as your lining for your dress. So if you use, I know a lot of people who use their lining fabric and they cut their mock-up out of that, and then when they fit it and everything, they use that as their lining. So that's also a very easy way to do it without wasting fabric. But again, if you're just starting out and you really don't know how this is going to fit you or what you're going to do, if something's too small, you're going to have to cut it up and slit it. And so if you really have no idea, I would just choose some scrap fabric. Best thing I have found is going to Goodwill or somewhere and get like $3 sheets. Doesn't care if they're cotton or polycotton or whatever. $3 sheets, and that whole big sheet you can cut tons and tons of mock-ups out of. So if you don't succeed the first time and it's too small, then you can cut a new one. Let's say that this was too small and it was pulling right here. I would make a slit right up here and it would splay out, and then I could put that on the new fabric and I would cut up a new mock-up with that little gap, and that way the next one would be a little bit bigger so I could refit that. But those are just a few basic minor tips and tricks on how to fit a commercial pattern to your body. You highly suggest using a mock-up. Definitely use scrap fabric if you can, especially if you're new. Turn it inside out and do the fitting inside out. If you have a friend, it makes it so much easier because they can reach back there and really fit it to you. But other than that, it's really not that big of a deal. It's not complicated or difficult. You just have to try it on inside out and just start pinning where it's too loose and cutting where it's too small. And then you just recut it or sew it up if it's just too big. And you'll end up with a very perfectly fitted garment. Some people will use their mock-ups and they'll get to that perfect mock-up where it fits perfectly, and that'll be their pattern piece for next time. So if you have pattern that you was not fitting you very well and you really had to spend 3 or 4, 5 mock-ups to try to get that to fit right, but they knew they were going to make another garment down the road of the same pattern, they'll save that mock-up and that will be their pattern piece. And that way down the road, they don't have to do the whole mock-up thing again unless they severely change body sizes. If you've gained or lost a good bit of weight, you're going to have to your course is going to need to redo all that work. But if they stayed relatively the same size and the first dress still fits them, they can use that mock-up as their pattern piece and that way it'll fit them right off the bat. But that is going to be it for today. That was our kickoff to the new year, or how to fit a commercial pattern to your body. Just a few little tips and tricks. It's not, of course, a comprehensive video. There's no way I could do a comprehensive video. It would be hours and hours and hours long to show you everything that could possibly go wrong. If you do have issues, leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer them. If you have a lot of issues and you really need help fitting something, I am always available on my website. You can go, we can maybe talk about doing a virtual consultation where I kind of show you, okay, I see where this needs to be taken up. Let's try this and let's do this. And we can always work on it that way as well. I'm more than happy to do that at any time. So I am finally able to actually start taking in a lot of clients and doing that sort of thing, either virtually or doing, custom work. More than happy to talk with you about that. Email is down below, website's down below. I don't have everything I do on the website, of course. I had time to work on that, but if you have something you need, I can put it on the website for you, and we can try and talk that through. Further than that, if you're just doing a few little tips, if you're just doing a little bit of modifications to a commercial pattern, I hope this helps. If it helped at all, please make sure you click the little like button so the algorithm knows that you like this video. Click subscribe to the channel, click the little bell notification so you're notified anytime I upload a new video. And as always, have a fantastic week. I'll see you in the next one, and Happy New Year!